Let's draw a goddess that was a huge deal in ancient Persia. Now, I'm not going to talk about Anahita right away. We need to talk about Persia and how complicated it is. So the Persian Empire, it emerged from one of the earliest cradles of civilization. And it was also one of the largest empires in history, like actually the biggest. So think about this. It spanned from Eastern Egypt all the way over to the Indus Valley, basically where Pakistan is today. It even spanned to Greece, Iran, Turkey, Iraq. I mean, seriously, it was a huge empire. Not only that, if we go all the way back, there is thousands of years of influence. We're talking about the Mesopotamian Empire, which is one of the oldest literate civilized societies known to man. In addition, the Persian Empire stood at a really interesting time. So we're talking about a time where they were worshiping at one point many gods. They were polytheistic, and all of a sudden they decided to start combining it all. They became more monotheistic, and that is where we go into Zoroastrianism. Where do all of these deities go? Admittedly, some do not survive the test of time. Others, they are pretty mutable. They'll grow and they'll change. Some will even expand to other civilizations. Other places will actually adapt some of those cultural norms and those gods. Or sometimes they just blend right in. Anahita actually survives, probably, allegedly, still to this day. She's just different. Most likely, Anahita began as an older goddess with another name. Perhaps she could have been Inanna or Ishtar from Mesopotamia. Maybe even the Hindu goddess Saraswati. Perhaps she was even an inspiration from an even older thing, like traits of water and healing and fertility. Those are typically associated with goddesses or women in mythology, and even historically, you can look at things like water-bearing. As it's implied, Anahita is the goddess of fertility, water, and healing. Also things like wisdom. In a hymn about her, it is said that she is actually, quote, the damp, strong, and untainted. We do see another aspect of Anahita. She is associated with war. She rides a chariot and supports warriors. In fact, they would actually pray to her before battle. She ultimately represented the underlying unity of the empire in defense of the realm. Though Anahita is quite important, an even more important deity, Ahura Mazda, is actually the supreme being, and this is actually where Zoroastrianism comes in. He is the creator of Indo-Persian culture. Now, okay, so this is where I'm going to start throwing a whole wrench in this whole thing. Much of what we know about Anahita is through Zoroastrian scholars. Now, this is basically the same polytheistic religion with all of the gods in a different framework, the monotheistic framework. So now, Ahura Mazda is the only god. That's it. This is going to sound familiar. He is the only one there. He can handle himself, and there is a duality going on between good, Ahura Mazda, and evil. So it becomes him versus the evil. Anahita becomes an aspect of Ahura Mazda. Not really a goddess anymore, even though she was a big deal. More like an angel. So unlike some of the previous episodes we've had with Christian monks talking about pagan gods, the Zoroastrians actually did a great job describing Anahita. They did it in quite a respectful and detailed way. So we know a lot about her. This is kind of my biggest inspiration for this piece. How she's described is that she's first a very beautiful woman. She's adorned with a white, beautiful dress with lots of gold embellishments. She's wearing lots of gold jewelry, a gold cape. She drives a golden chariot, which is drawn by 4 horses. Wind, rain, cloud, and sleet. I just thought that was so awesome. So now, even though Anahita became an aspect of Ahura Mazda and she technically wasn't a goddess anymore, people still went to her shrines and her temples and they still worshipped her. Think of it like the Holy Trinity, where we have God, the Holy Spirit, and God the Son. So we have Ahura Mazda, which would be God, the supreme being. We also have 2 other deities, Anahita, and we also have Mithra, which we're not really talking about, but they're a very important figure as well in this whole thing. Mithra and Anahita were representations of Ahura Mazda's wisdom, his healing, his blessing, goodness, if you will. Ultimately, the Persian Empire fell to Alexander the Great. That's a story for another day. But Anahita still survived, even thrived. Her cult flourished to the point where temples to Anahita were opulent structures ornamented in gold and silver. People would donate very expensive items to these temples. Many, many empires reigned over the course of a few hundred years in this particular area, and Anahita continued to hold divine importance even though Zoroastrianism was the prominent religion of the time. It really wasn't until the Sasanian Empire fell to Arab Muslims did much of Persian culture and Anahita become more suppressed. Now you're probably wondering, well, where is she now? So there is actually a legend of a person named Bibi Sharbanu, and her alternate other names are the Lady of the Land or Lady of the King's Land. So Anahita's name ultimately is replaced by Bibi Sharbanu. Shrines and temples that were once dedicated to Anahita were then transferred over to Bibi Sharbanu. Some scholars argue that in a way, Anahita still survives today in a different form. To this day, Zoroastrians will actually worship Anahita as her authentic self. This is because she is the goddess of fertility, healing, and water, which is the life essence. It keeps us all alive. As you can see, I was clearly drawn to her 4 horses. I thought they were super badass, so that's what I focused on. If you like my art, make sure to check out my socials down in the description below. And if you like videos like this where I draw and talk about mythology and break these gods and goddesses down, you can find more videos right here. Magic. It's fine.